The bank lobby fell silent as the woman in the navy suit stepped forward. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," she said, sliding a slip across the counter. Emily, the new teller, glanced at the amount and froze. "I'm going to need additional verification," she said, her voice tight. The woman raised an eyebrow, calm but unyielding. Then she placed her ID on the counter, and the manager gasped. What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me, this is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The glass doors of Metropolitan First Bank slid open with a hiss, letting in the crisp morning air and the steady hum of downtown traffic. Inside, the lobby was already alive with the rhythm of a weekday rush. The shuffle of polished shoes across marble floors, the low murmur of conversations, the occasional impatient sigh from customers clutching deposit slips. Behind the counter, Emily Carter adjusted her name tag for the third time that morning. It was her first full week as a teller, and though she had rehearsed every possible transaction in her head, her nerves refused to settle. She wanted to make a good impression, to prove she belonged here. Every keystroke felt like it carried the weight of judgment. Her manager had reminded her earlier. Stay sharp. Watch for red flags. We can't afford mistakes. Those words echoed in her mind as she scanned the growing line of customers. Then the woman appeared. She was striking, not because of extravagance, but because of presence. Tall, poised, dressed in a tailored navy suit that seemed to command respect without demanding it. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her movements deliberate, her gaze calm yet piercing. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had long ago stopped needing to prove anything. Emily noticed the subtle shift in the room as the woman approached the counter. Conversations dipped, eyes followed. There was something about her that drew attention, though Emily couldn't quite place it. "Good morning," the woman said, her voice smooth, confident. She slid a withdrawal slip across the counter. "I'd like to make a withdrawal." Emily glanced at the slip. The amount was large, larger than anything she had processed so far. Her pulse quickened. She looked back at the woman, then at the slip again. "Of course," Emily said, forcing a smile. "May I see your ID?" The woman handed over her driver's license without hesitation. Emily studied it carefully. The name read Dr. Maya Carter. The photo matched perfectly. Everything seemed in order. And yet, doubt crept in. Emily's training had drilled into her the importance of vigilance. Large withdrawals could mean fraud. She remembered the stories her colleagues had shared. Scammers walking in with convincing IDs. Smooth talkers who left tellers humiliated and banks short thousands of dollars. Her eyes flicked back to the woman. Maya Carter. Well-dressed. Confidence. But something about the situation gnawed at Emily. She hesitated. The line behind the woman shifted restlessly. A man coughed. Someone tapped their foot. Emily felt the weight of their impatience pressing down on her. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked, her tone still calm, though her brow arched slightly. Emily swallowed. "It's just, this is a very large withdrawal. I'll need to verify a few things." Maya's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, not amused, not offended, but something in between. "Of course. Do what you need to do." Emily nodded, but her hands trembled slightly as she typed into the system. The screen confirmed the account was active, the balance more than sufficient. Everything checked out. Still, her instincts screamed caution. She glanced at Maya again, searching for some sign, some tell. But Maya stood patiently, her posture unshaken, her gaze steady. Emily's thoughts spiraled. What if this is a test? What if I approve it and it turns out to be a fraud? What if I deny it and it's legitimate? Her training manual had never prepared her for the human side of this. The weight of judgment, the fear of being wrong. The lobby seemed to grow quieter, the air heavier. Emily could feel eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. The option to approve. The option to deny. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. And then, she froze. Emily's hand lingers above the deny button, her decision suspended in the air, as the camera of the story zooms in on her trembling fingers. The audience is left wondering, will she trust the evidence in front of her, or the doubt in her mind? If you were in Emily's position, faced with a stranger requesting a large withdrawal, would you trust the documents in front of you, or your instincts? The silence in the lobby stretched thin, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above. Emily's throat felt dry as she cleared it, her eyes darting between the computer screen and the woman standing before her. Everything in the system confirmed legitimacy, yet her gut twisted with unease. She thought of the training sessions, the warnings about fraud, the stories of tellers who had been too trusting. Her hand trembled slightly as she pushed the ID back across the counter. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice lower than she intended. "I can't process this withdrawal without additional verification." The words hung in the air like a sudden chill. A man in line shifted impatiently, muttering under his breath. Another customer craned her neck to see what was happening. The woman, Maya, did not flinch. She simply tilted her head, her expression unreadable, as though she had heard this line before many times in many different places. "Additional verification?" Maya repeated, her tone calm but edged with curiosity. "What exactly do you need?" Emily's pulse quickened. She hadn't expected the question to be so direct. "I'll need to call a manager," she said quickly, almost defensively. "It's just protocol." Maya's eyes lingered on her, steady and unblinking. There was no anger in them, but there was weight, an unspoken reminder that this was not a woman easily dismissed. Still, she stepped back slightly, folding her hands in front of her, allowing Emily to make her call. The phone felt heavy in Emily's hand as she dialed the extension. Her voice wavered as she explained the situation, aware that the entire lobby was now watching. She could feel the judgment of strangers pressing against her back, the silent question in their eyes. Why is this taking so long? When she hung up, she avoided Maya's gaze. "My manager will be here shortly," she said, forcing a professional tone. Maya gave a small nod, her composure unbroken. She glanced around the lobby, noticing the stares, the whispers. For a moment, her eyes softened, as though she pitied Emily more than she resented her. The seconds dragged on. Emily's palms grew damp against the counter. She wanted to explain herself, to justify her hesitation, but the words tangled in her throat. She thought of her first week, of the pressure to prove herself, of the fear of being the one who let something slip through. Finally, the manager appeared, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. He approached with brisk efficiency, but when he saw the ID lying on the counter, his stride faltered. His eyes widened, recognition flashing instantly across his face. Emily noticed the change, confusion tightening her chest. She looked from him to Maya, then back again, trying to piece together what she was missing. The manager swallowed hard, his voice suddenly careful. "Dr. Carter," he said, inclining his head slightly. "I wasn't expecting to see you here today." The lobby fell into a hush. Customers leaned closer, sensing the shift in tone, the sudden gravity of the moment. Emily's stomach dropped, though she didn't yet understand why. Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile, her eyes never leaving Emily's. "It seems," she said softly, "that my withdrawal has become more complicated than I anticipated." Emily's breath caught. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She could feel it in the way her manager's posture had changed, in the way the room itself seemed to hold its breath. Her hand, still resting near the keyboard, trembled again. She had thought she was protecting the bank, protecting herself. But now, with every passing second, she realized she might have made a mistake far larger than she could comprehend. The manager's gaze flicked to her, sharp and questioning, as though silently asking how she could not have known. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her voice betrayed her. The crowd waited. Maya waited. And Emily stood frozen, caught between the weight of her decision and the dawning realization that the woman she had just refused was no ordinary customer at all. The moment cracked open like glass under pressure, and Emily felt the ground shift beneath her. The manager's recognition of Maya leaves Emily suspended in dread, the truth hovering just out of reach, as the lobby holds its collective breath. Have you ever made a decision you thought was right in the moment, only to realize too late that it might cost you everything? The lobby was still hushed when Maya's gaze shifted from the manager back to Emily. The weight of that look made Emily's stomach twist. She wanted to shrink behind the counter, to vanish into the marble floor, but she couldn't move. Maya's voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried through the room with quiet authority. I've given you my identification. I've provided my account details. And yet, you refused me. Tell me, young lady, what exactly do you see when you look at me? The question struck harder than any raised voice could have. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. She felt the eyes of the customers burning into her, waiting for her answer. Did she see a stranger? A risk? Or something she had been trained, unconsciously, to doubt? Maya leaned slightly closer, her tone still even. Is it the amount that troubles you, or is it me? The words sliced through the silence, and a ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. A man in line shifted uncomfortably, while a woman near the back whispered to her companion. Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to protest, to insist it wasn't personal, but her own hesitation betrayed her. The manager cleared his throat, trying to diffuse the tension. Dr. Carter, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Emily is new, and she. Maya raised a hand, silencing him without effort. Her eyes never left Emily's. A misunderstanding, she repeated softly, as if tasting the word. Or a judgment? Emily's heart pounded. She thought of the training manuals, the endless emphasis on caution, the subtle warnings about who might try to take advantage. But standing here, under Maya's gaze, she realized how flimsy those justifications sounded. The lobby seemed to lean in closer, every ear straining for what would come next. And in that moment, Emily felt the crushing weight of her own choice. She had thought she was protecting the bank. Instead, she had humiliated someone who radiated nothing but composure and legitimacy. Maya straightened, her presence filling the space. Tell me, she said, her voice carrying like a quiet verdict, if you were in my place, treated with suspicion despite every proof in hand, would you feel safe in this bank, or would you feel small? The question hung in the air, not just for Emily, but for everyone watching. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding, some shifting uncomfortably, as though the question had been aimed at them too. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to answer, but the truth was already written across her face. And then, with a calmness that only deepened the sting, Maya added, perhaps the real test today is not mine, but yours. The words landed like a gavel, final and resonant. The cinematic beat was unmistakable. The teller frozen in shame, the crowd caught in collective reflection, and Maya standing tall, her quiet power reshaping the entire room. The lobby seemed to hold its breath as the manager's words echoed, Dr. Carter. Emily's mind scrambled, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. The name on the ID, the calm authority in Maya's voice, the way the manager's posture had shifted into something close to reverence. It all began to click together in a way that made Emily's chest tighten. Maya reached across the counter and retrieved her ID with deliberate grace. She didn't raise her voice and didn't need to. Instead, she turned slightly so that the customers in line could see the card in her hand. The embossed lettering caught the light. Dr. Maya Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Metropolitan First Bank. Gasps rippled through the lobby. A woman near the back whispered, she's the CEO, while a man in a business suit muttered, unbelievable. The tension that had been simmering now erupted into a wave of murmurs and shifting feet. Emily's face flushed hot. Her breath came shallow, her hands trembling against the counter. She had refused service to the very person who owned the building she stood in, who signed the paychecks, who set the policies she had been so desperate to follow. Maya's eyes swept the room, calm but commanding. "It seems," she said, her voice carrying easily, "that even in my own bank, I am not immune to suspicion." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of discomfort through the crowd. Emily felt them crash over her, each syllable a reminder of her mistake. She wanted to apologize, to explain, but her throat locked tight. Maya turned back to her, her expression unreadable. "Tell me," she said softly, though the entire lobby could hear, "what lesson do you think your customers are learning right now? That proof is not enough. That trust is conditional." The question wasn't just for Emily. It was for everyone watching. The customers shifted uneasily, some nodding, some avoiding eye contact, as though the question had pierced them too. Emily's heart pounded. She thought of the training manuals, the endless warnings about fraud, the pressure to be cautious. But standing here, she realized none of that mattered. What mattered was the human being in front of her, a woman she had reduced to suspicion despite every piece of evidence in her favor. Maya let the silence stretch, her presence filling every corner of the room. Then, with a faint smile that carried more weight than anger ever could, she said, "Perhaps the real withdrawal today is not money, but dignity." The cinematic beat crystallized in that moment. The stunned teller, the murmuring crowd, and the CEO standing tall, her quiet words cutting sharper than any reprimand. And woven into the air was the unspoken engagement, a question that lingered in every mind present. If you were in Maya's place, would you have stayed silent, or would you have demanded the world see you for who you are? The lobby, moments ago, buzzing with whispers, fell into a heavy silence. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was the kind that pressed down on everyone's chest, thick and unrelenting. Emily stood frozen behind the counter, her face pale, her hands trembling just enough for the nearest customers to notice. She wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, but the words tangled in her throat like barbed wire. Maya didn't move right away. She simply stood there, her ID still in hand, her presence filling the space more powerfully than any raised voice could. The stillness was deliberate, a silence that demanded reflection. Every second stretched longer than the last, and Emily felt each one like a hammer striking her ribs. The manager shifted uneasily beside Maya, his polished confidence suddenly cracked. He opened his mouth as if to intervene, but Maya lifted a single hand, silencing him without a word. Her eyes remained on Emily, calm yet unyielding, as though she were waiting for the young teller to confront the weight of her own actions. Emily's mind raced. She thought of the training manuals, the endless emphasis on vigilance, the warnings about fraud. She thought of her first week, of the pressure to prove herself, of the fear of being the one who slipped up. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the woman standing before her, the CEO of the very bank she had just humiliated. The silence deepened, and Emily realized it wasn't just hers to bear. The customers in line shifted uncomfortably, some glancing at the floor, others staring openly at the scene. The air was thick with unspoken judgment, not only of Emily's mistake, but of the larger truth Maya's presence had revealed. Finally, Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice low, but carrying through the room. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "This silence? It isn't mine. It belongs to you. To every person here who has seen what just happened and is wondering what it means." Emily's breath caught. The words weren't angry, but they cut deeper than any reprimand could. She felt exposed, as though Maya had peeled back the layers of her fear and revealed the truth beneath, that her hesitation had not been about policy, but about perception. Maya straightened again, her gaze sweeping the lobby. "Silence," she continued, "can be louder than words. It tells us who we are when we choose not to speak, when we choose not to act. And right now, this silence is asking a question of all of us. The crowd seemed to lean in, caught in the gravity of her words. Emily's heart pounded, her throat tight. She wanted to answer, but she knew the question wasn't only for her. Maya let the pause linger, then added, "If you were standing where I am, treated with suspicion despite every proof in your hand, would you feel respected or would you feel small?" The cinematic beat crystallized in that moment, the teller trembling in shame, the customers shifting in uneasy reflection, and the CEO standing tall, her quiet words echoing louder than any outburst. And woven into the silence was the engagement that clung to every listener's mind. When dignity is denied in plain sight, do you stay silent or do you speak? Emily's chest was still tight when Maya finally broke the silence. With a calmness that felt almost disarming, she gestured toward the glass-walled office at the far end of the lobby. "Walk with me," she said. The words weren't a request. They were an invitation wrapped in authority, and Emily found her legs moving before her mind could catch up. The crowd parted as the two women crossed the marble floor, whispers trailing behind them like shadows. Every step felt heavier, as though Emily were walking deeper into her own reckoning. Inside the office, the door clicked shut, muting the noise of the lobby. The space was elegant, but not ostentatious, sleek furniture, a wall of books, and a panoramic view of the city skyline. It was a kind of office that radiated both power and restraint. Emily stood awkwardly near the door, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, while Maya moved with ease, setting her ID on the desk, as though to remind Emily of the truth she had just denied. For a long moment, Maya said nothing. She simply studied Emily, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched again, but this time it was different, less public, more intimate, like a mirror being held up. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to apologize, to beg forgiveness, but the words felt too small for the weight of her mistake. Finally, Maya spoke. "Do you know why I asked you to come in here?" Emily shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. To fire me?" Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile, not of amusement, but of recognition. That would be the easy choice. But easy choices rarely teach us anything. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze steady. "Tell me, Emily, what were you protecting out there? The bank? Yourself? Or something else?" Emily's eyes stung. She thought of the training manuals, the endless warnings about fraud, the pressure to prove herself. I didn't want to make a mistake," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought being cautious was the right thing." Maya nodded slowly. Caution has its place. But when caution becomes suspicion without cause, it stops protecting and starts diminishing. Do you understand the difference? Emily swallowed hard, her shame pressing down like a weight. "Yes," she whispered. Maya leaned back in her chair, her tone softening but never losing its edge. "I've spent my entire career being underestimated. People looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong in the boardroom, someone who couldn't possibly lead. And every time, I had to prove them wrong. Do you know how exhausting it is to live like that?" Emily's chest tightened further. She shook her head, unable to meet Maya's eyes. "That's why I built this bank," Maya continued, her voice steady. "Not just to move money, but to move people, to create a place where fairness isn't optional. And yet, even here, I find myself standing at a counter, treated as though my word, my proof, my very presence isn't enough." The words struck Emily harder than any reprimand could. She felt the sting of tears at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back, ashamed to cry in front of the woman she had wronged. Maya let the silence settle again, then added, "So here is your lesson, Emily. Every customer who walks through those doors deserves dignity first, policy second. If you forget that, you're not protecting the bank, you're betraying it." The cinematic beat landed in that moment. Emily standing small and shaken, Maya seated in quiet authority, the office itself a stage where power was not shouted, but spoken with precision. And woven into the air was the engagement that lingered like a challenge. If you were in Maya's position, would you punish the mistake? Or would you turn it into a lesson that could change someone forever? Maya let the weight of her last words settle before she rose from her chair and walked toward the tall window that overlooked the city. The skyline shimmered in the morning light, glass towers catching the sun like mirrors. She stood there for a moment, her back to Emily, as though gathering memories from the view itself. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, but it carried the gravity of lived experience. "I wasn't born into this office," she said, her reflection faint in the glass. "I wasn't handed a corner desk or a title. I started at a desk much like yours, counting bills, balancing drawers, praying I wouldn't make a mistake that would cost me my job." She turned slightly, her eyes finding Emily's. "And I made mistakes. Plenty of them. But the difference was every mistake I made was magnified because people already doubted me before I even began." Emily shifted uncomfortably, her throat tight. She wanted to look away, but Maya's gaze held her in place. "I remember one day," Maya continued, her tone steady, "a customer refused to believe I worked at the bank. He asked for someone else, anyone else, because he didn't trust me with his money. I had the training, the credentials, the same uniform as everyone else, but none of that mattered. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible and scrutinized at the same time?" Emily shook her head, her voice barely audible. "No." Maya nodded slowly. "That's the truth of it. You don't know. And that's why I'm telling you this. Because what happened out there wasn't just about a withdrawal. It was about a pattern I've lived through my entire career. And I refuse to let it continue in the very institution I built to break it." The words struck Emily like a blow. She felt the sting of shame, but also something else, an opening, a chance to understand. Maya stepped closer, her presence filling the space between them. "You're new, Emily. You're scared of failing. I see that. But fear cannot be the lens through which you see people. If it is, you'll never see them at all. You'll only see shadows of your own doubt." Emily's eyes burned, tears threatening to spill. She wanted to apologize again, but Maya's expression told her that words alone wouldn't be enough. Maya's voice softened further, almost like a mentor's. "I'm not here to destroy you for one mistake. I'm here to ask you, what will you do with this moment? Will you let it define you as the teller who judged too quickly, or will you let it transform you into someone who sees more clearly?" The cinematic beat crystallized in that instant. Maya's story hanging in the air like a mirror of resilience, Emily trembling under the weight of her own reflection, and the office itself charged with the energy of a turning point. And woven into the moment was the engagement that lingered like a challenge. When someone shares the scars of their past to teach you, do you shrink from a lesson or do you rise to meet it? Emily's composure finally cracked. The weight of Maya's words, the silence of the office, and the reflection of her own actions pressed down until she could no longer hold herself upright. Her shoulders slumped and her voice broke as she whispered, "I'm so sorry." The apology tumbled out raw, unpolished, carrying the sting of shame. Tears welled in her eyes, and she quickly brushed them away, embarrassed to be crying in front of the woman she had wronged. "I didn't mean to disrespect you," she continued, her words rushing now, desperate to be heard. "I was scared of making a mistake, of losing this job. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now. I wasn't. I judged you before I even realized it." Maya didn't interrupt. She stood still, her expression calm, her silence allowing Emily's words to fill the space. It wasn't the silence of condemnation. It was the silence of listening, of giving Emily the room to face her own truth. Emily's chest heaved as she tried to steady her breath. "I've worked so hard to get here," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted to prove myself, to show I could be trusted. But instead, I let my fear control me. And I hurt you. I humiliated you. I humiliated myself." Her knees felt weak, and for a moment she thought she might collapse into the chair behind her. She clasped her hands tightly together, as though holding herself in place. "Please," she whispered, "give me another chance. I'll do better. I'll learn. I don't want this mistake to be the only thing that defines me." Maya finally moved, stepping closer until she stood just a few feet away. Her presence was steady, grounding, like a pillar in the storm of Emily's emotions. She studied the young teller for a long moment, her eyes searching not for excuses, but for sincerity. "You're right about one thing," Maya said at last, her voice even. "Fear drove you. And fear will always lead you to see people as threats instead of as human beings. But what I hear in your words now is not fear, it's honesty. And honesty is the first step toward growth." Emily blinked back fresh tears, her chest tightening with both relief and shame. Maya's tone softened, though it carried the same weight. "I don't need perfect employees, Emily. I need people who are willing to face their mistakes and rise from them. You've shown me that today. The question is, will you carry this lesson forward, or will you let it fade the moment the pressure returns?" The cinematic beat crystallized in that moment. Emily trembling, her apology raw and vulnerable, Maya standing tall yet compassionate, her words transforming the weight of failure into the possibility of redemption. And woven into the moment was the engagement that lingered like a mirror for the audience. When you've hurt someone through your own fear or bias, do you hide behind excuses, or do you step forward with an apology that risks everything but might change everything? The door to Maya's office opened, and together she and Emily stepped back into the lobby. The crowd, which had not dispersed, turned as one. Conversations hushed instantly, the weight of anticipation thick in the air. Everyone had seen the refusal. Everyone had seen the reveal. Now they waited to see what the CEO would do. Maya didn't rush. She walked with measured steps to the center of the lobby, her presence commanding without effort. Emily followed a pace behind, her head lowered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The manager lingered near the counter, his face pale, as though unsure whether to intervene or disappear. Maya turned to face the customers, her voice carrying with quiet authority. "You all witnessed what happened here today." A customer, me, presented identification, proof, and legitimacy. And yet I was refused. Not because the system failed, not because the documents were false, but because doubt outweighed trust. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. Emily felt every word pierce her chest, but she also knew Maya wasn't speaking only to her. She was speaking to everyone. Maya's gaze swept the room, steady and unflinching. This is not just about one teller. It is about what we allow ourselves to see, or refuse to see in others. It is about the silent judgments we carry, the assumptions we make before a word is spoken. She paused, letting the silence stretch, the weight of her words pressing into every corner of the lobby. Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to vanish, but Maya's next words tethered her in place. Now I could choose to punish. I could make an example of this young woman, strip her of her position, and walk away satisfied that justice was done. But what would that teach us? Do mistakes end in ruin? That fear deserves only condemnation. The customers leaned in, caught in the gravity of her voice. Emily's heart pounded, her palms damp. She braced herself for the verdict. Maya turned slightly, her eyes finding Emily. "Or," she continued, "we can choose a harder path. We can choose to turn mistakes into lessons. We can choose to grow instead of destroy. Because the truth is, every one of us has judged too quickly at some point in our lives. The question is not whether we've done it. The question is what we do after." Emily's eyes burned with tears she could no longer hold back. She felt the weight of the crowd's gaze, but more than that, she felt the weight of Maya's mercy. Maya stepped closer, her voice softening but still carrying. "Emily will remain here, not because she was right, but because she was wrong, and because she is willing to face that wrong. She will learn, she will grow, and she will serve as a reminder to all of us that dignity must never be optional. The cinematic beat crystallized in that moment. The CEO standing tall in the center of the lobby, her words transforming judgment into a public lesson, the teller trembling but spared, and the crowd caught in a silence that was no longer heavy with shame but alive with reflection. And woven into that silence was the engagement that lingered like a challenge. If you held the power to punish someone who wronged you, would you choose retribution, or would you choose to turn that moment into a lesson that could change them forever? The lobby still buzzed with the echo of Maya's words, but beneath the surface there was a deeper shift taking place. Customers who had come in for routine deposits and withdrawals now found themselves caught in something larger. A moment that felt less like a transaction and more like a reckoning. The marble floors, the polished counters, even the glass walls seemed to reflect the weight of what had just unfolded. Emily stood near the counter, her face pale, but her posture straighter than before. She had been spared, but not excused. The lesson was still burning in her chest, and she could feel the eyes of the crowd on her. Not with the same judgment as before, but with a strange mixture of curiosity and expectation. Maya remained at the center of the lobby, her presence steady, her voice calm but resonant. "This bank was built on trust," she said, her words carrying like a current through the room. But trust is fragile. It can fracture with a single moment of doubt, a single act of prejudice, a single silence when someone should have spoken. The words seemed to reverberate against the glass walls, and for a fleeting second, Emily imagined she could hear them crack. It wasn't real, of course. The building stood solid, but the symbolism was undeniable. The illusion of perfection, of seamless transparency, had been shattered. A man in line cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. "Dr. Carter, does this mean the bank isn't what we thought it was?" Maya turned toward him, her expression thoughtful. "It means the bank is only as strong as the people who serve it. Policies and systems are glass. They look flawless until pressure reveals the cracks. What matters is whether we repair those cracks or pretend they aren't there." The crowd shifted, murmurs rising again. Some nodded in agreement, others looked uneasy, as though realizing they too had judged someone unfairly at some point. Emily felt the truth of Maya's words settle into her bones. She had a crack today, but perhaps she could also be part of the repair. Maya's gaze swept the lobby once more. This moment is not about shame. It is about choice. We can let this fracture weaken us, or we can let it remind us to build stronger. Stronger in fairness. Stronger in dignity. Stronger in trust. The cinematic beat crystallized, the CEO standing tall beneath the glass ceiling, her words transforming a single mistake into a collective reflection, the teller humble but resolute, and the customers caught in the realization that they were part of this story too. And woven into the air was the engagement that lingered like a challenge. When the cracks of injustice appear before your eyes, do you look away and pretend the glass is whole, or do you step forward to help repair it? The lobby had quieted again, but this time the silence was different. It wasn't heavy with shame or tension. It was charged with expectation. Every eye followed Maya as she stepped toward the center of the room, her heels clicking softly against the marble. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle, then turned slowly to face the crowd. Her voice, calm yet resonant, carried through the space without effort. What happened here today should not stay within these walls. It is not just a story about one teller and one customer. It is a story about how quickly trust can fracture and how deeply dignity matters in every interaction. Emily stood near the counter, her heart pounding. She felt exposed, but she also felt something else, relief. Maya wasn't hiding what had happened. She was transforming it into something larger, something that might ripple far beyond this lobby. Maya continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. This bank is not just a place where money changes hands. It is a place where people entrust us with their livelihoods, their dreams, their futures. And if we cannot honor their dignity, then every dollar we count is worthless. A murmur of agreement rose from the crowd. Some customers nodded. Others whispered to one another. The atmosphere shifted from unease to reflection, as though everyone present had been pulled into the gravity of her words. Maya's tone deepened, carrying the cadence of a broadcast. I want every person here to remember this moment. Remember that fairness is not optional. Remember that dignity is not negotiable. And remember that silence, when faced with injustice, is as dangerous as the injustice itself. Emily felt her throat tighten. The words weren't just for the customers. They were for her too. She realized that Maya wasn't simply addressing the lobby. She was sending a message that would echo far beyond these walls, a message that could reshape the culture of the entire bank. Maya let the silence stretch for a heartbeat, then added, "This is my last word on the matter. We will not be a bank that hides behind glass walls of policy while people are diminished at the counter. We will be a bank that sees, that listens, that respects. And if we fail at that, then we fail at everything." The cinematic beat crystallized in that instant. Maya standing tall in the center of the lobby, her words ringing like a broadcast to the world, the customers caught in a collective hush, and Emily trembling but transformed, realizing she had been part of a moment that would be remembered. And woven into the air was the engagement that lingered like a challenge. If you had the chance to turn your personal humiliation into a message that could change others, would you stay silent, or would you speak so the world could hear? The lobby slowly began to return to its rhythm, customers shifting back into lines, the hum of conversation rising again, but the air still carried the weight of what had just unfolded. Emily remained near the counter, her body heavy with exhaustion, though her heart felt strangely lighter. She had been spared, but more than that, she had been reshaped. Maya lingered in the center of the room for a moment longer, her gaze sweeping across the faces that had witnessed everything. She could see the reflection of her words in their eyes, some thoughtful, some unsettled, some quietly inspired. She knew this moment would not be forgotten. Finally, she turned back toward her office, her steps measured, her posture unshaken. Emily followed with her eyes, torn between relief and awe. She had expected anger, punishment, dismissal. Instead, she had been given something far more difficult, a second chance. Inside her office once more, Maya closed the door and allowed herself a breath. The city skyline stretched before her, glittering in the late morning sun. She placed her ID back into her wallet, her hand steady, her expression calm. Yet beneath that calm was a quiet storm of reflection. Mercy, she knew, was never easy. It cost more than punishment ever could. Punishment was swift, final, clean. Mercy lingered. It demanded patience, demanded faith in someone else's ability to change. And faith, Maya understood, was always a risk. She thought of Emily's trembling apology, of the tears she had tried to hide, of the raw honesty in her voice. Maya had seen herself in that moment, not the CEO she was now, but the young woman she had once been, desperate to prove herself in a world that doubted her at every turn. That recognition stayed in her hand. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, strong and composed, but she whispered softly to herself, "Power isn't in punishing. It's in lifting others higher." The cinematic beat crystallized there. Maya alone in her office, the city sprawling beyond the glass, her words a quiet vow that echoed louder than any speech. And woven into that vow was the engagement that lingered like a mirror for everyone who had witnessed the story. If you were given the power to break someone or to build them, which choice would you make, knowing that mercy costs more but leaves a legacy that punishment never can? The lobby had emptied slowly after Maya's words, but the echo of the moment lingered in every corner of the bank. Emily sat at her station long after the last customer had left, her hands resting on the counter, her mind replaying every second of what had happened. She felt exposed, humbled, but also strangely alive, as though she had been cracked open and something new was beginning to take root inside her. Maya, meanwhile, returned to her office. The city stretched out before her, the glass towers gleaming in the afternoon sun. She stood at the window, her reflection staring back at her, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to exhale. She had carried the weight of leadership for years, but moments like this reminded her why she chose the harder path. Mercy was not weakness, it was the most demanding form of strength. Emily knocked softly on the doorframe, hesitant. "Dr. Carter?" Maya turned, her expression calm, unreadable. "Yes, Emily? I wanted to thank you," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Not just for keeping me here, but for showing me what I couldn't see. I don't deserve your patience, but I promise I won't waste it." Maya studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Because this isn't about deserving. It's about what you choose to do next. Every day you'll face the same choice, fear or fairness. And every day you'll have to decide which one you serve." Emily swallowed hard, the words sinking deep. She nodded more firmly this time. "I'll choose fairness." Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then you'll do well here." The two women stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the day settling into something steadier, something almost hopeful. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of a lesson that had unfolded within the glass walls of the bank. But for Emily, the world had shifted. And for Maya, the choice to lift rather than break had once again proven its worth. The cinematic beat crystallized in that quiet exchange. The young teller, humble but determined. The CEO, resolute yet merciful. And the bank itself transformed into more than a place of money. It had become a place of meaning. And woven into that moment was the engagement that lingered like a whisper to the audience. When someone gives you a second chance, do you treat it as a gift to be cherished or a test to be passed? The day had stretched long, but the weight of it lingered even as the last customers trickled out and the lobby lights dimmed to their evening glow. Emily remained at her station, quietly balancing her drawer, though her mind was far from the numbers on the screen. Every sound, the shuffle of papers, the hum of the air conditioning, seemed sharper, as if the world itself had slowed to let her absorb what had happened. She knew she would never forget this day. In her office, Maya sat alone, the city skyline now bathed in the orange wash of sunset. The glass towers outside reflected the fading light, fractured into shards of gold and crimson. She leaned back in her chair, her hands folded loosely in her lap, her thoughts drifting not to the transactions of the day, but to the people. To Emily, to the customers who had witnessed the moment, to the silent ripple that would spread far beyond these walls. She thought of the choice she had made, to show mercy instead of punishment. It has not been easy. Mercy never was. It demanded patience, demanded faith, demanded the willingness to risk being disappointed. But as she replayed Emily's trembling apology, the raw honesty in her voice, Maya felt certain she had chosen the harder, better path. Emily knocked softly on the doorframe, hesitant but determined. "Dr. Carter," she said, her voice steadier than before, "I just wanted to say, I won't waste this chance. I'll carry it with me, every day." Maya studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Because second chances are not gifts, they are responsibilities. And how you carry them defines who you become." Emily's eyes glistened, but this time with resolve rather than shame. She nodded firmly, then stepped back, leaving Maya to her thoughts. The office grew quiet again, the city outside slipping into twilight. Maya turned back to the window, her reflection merging with the skyline. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Power isn't measured by how many you can break. It's measured by how many you choose to lift." The cinematic beat crystallized in that final image. The CEO silhouetted against the fading light. Her words a vow that would outlast the day, the teller walking away with a new sense of purpose, and the bank itself transformed into more than a place of money. It had become a place of meaning. And woven into that closing moment was the engagement that lingered like a final reflection. When life hands you the power to define someone else's future, will you use it to end their story or to help them begin a new one? So, tell me, if you were in his shoes, mocked and underestimated, would you have revealed your success or walked away in silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that flip the script on arrogance.